Hello, and welcome back to Jollyroger Hobbies for part 3 of our Mustang build. Right now, we have our battery hatch cover, which we have put the foam filler on. We mudded it. Now, I've sanded it. We've taken a 280 grit sandpaper, sanded it down, and then we took a 380 grit and smoothed it out. Now, we got it perfectly smooth. And you can kind of see the green paint from the side came across and contaminated over the foam filler, which is not a problem because we're painting it right now. But we got it perfectly smooth. Now we're going to use a regular black enamel spray paint. Now here's where it gets tricky. Enamel tends, or the spray paint itself, it's the propellant inside, tends to eat foam. They say basically you should spray it at a distance. Now, I've tested this. I've cut out little pieces of the Z foam on the inside of the aircraft and come out here and sprayed them a dozen times, and the Z foam seems to hold up to the spray paint perfectly. Up close, far away, doesn't seem to have a problem. But I kind of forgot one little detail. The foam filler. Now, to test that, I would need to take a chunk of the foam filler and let it dry, sand it down smooth, and then paint it. And I guess I just didn't want to go through all that. So, battery hatch cover is going to be the first test. We'll see what the spray paint does to it. I mean, if I have to buy a new cover, and that's $7, and then figure out how I'm going to paint the rest of the aircraft. If this test goes well, we'll go ahead and continue to paint the rest of the aircraft. Alright, now just for safety's sake, we're going to try and keep it at a distance like you're supposed to. A good 12 inches at least. If we have to give it one or more coats, we will. Alright, then we'll let that dry and see what happens. But at the moment, I'd have to say the spray paint's working fine on it. No problems. So now that the paint's dried, we take a look and we can see a little bit right there of the foam filler. Not much, but there's definitely a shade there. And as I feel over it, it feels a little bit rough. So definitely the aerosol paint had something to do with that. So what we're going to do, we're going to take some very fine sandpaper, which is about what they call extra fine, 400 grit, and we're just going to lightly sand over that. Kind of brought out a shine a little bit, so that looks a lot better. So I'll just do the whole thing. There. Now that looks pretty darn good. Alright, now, we have this right here now. Show you, I do not have the paint to match this gray / silver. Without knowing exactly Z foam's content, which of course we don't, or Horizon if I can speak here, Horizon Hobbies color, without knowing exactly what it is, and I'm pretty sure they won't divulge that information. So we're going to have to repaint the entire aircraft. Otherwise, if we try to match it and get a brush, this is going to be the thing. You can see here where I tried to match and use thinner to blend it in, and it didn't quite work so well. So we're just repainting the entire aircraft, saying forget it. So I picked a color out which I really liked. I took a piece of paper just to test what it was going to be and painted it. This is Tester's Chrome. And I think that is going to look really neat. Try and filter out some of the light so you can see it. I think that's going to look really neat. It's basically, it looks like exactly like a real Mustang would coming straight out of the factory with the bare skin, which a lot of those went over. But that's going to be neat. So we'll can paint the entire aircraft that. What we need to do still first is sand down all of our foam putty. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll get to taping up and go to painting next. So we have sanded down all of our surfaces now, completely smooth, on both sides of the wing and the fuselage. What I used is Tester's Hobby Sanding Films. Now, for the bring it down to the level and sort of smooth it, I just used a dark beige, which is a medium, at 280 grit. And then to smooth it out, I used the light tan, which is an extra fine. Or no, wait, no, I take it back. This is the light gray. Kind of hard to tell within that, but this is the fine 320 grit. And I could have used something, you know, used the light tan at 400 grit or the red at 600 grit, but we're going to get it smoother than the actual foam surrounding it, so I don't want to do that. So we kept with the light gray at the 320 grit, which worked out just fine. So now we're going to get it ready for painting, but first we need to cover up all these wires. So that's where the factory servo tape comes in. Now this is part number EFL 6735 for those who are curious. And this is just a factory servo tape wire. Now keep in mind, this does not come painted. This was a huge complaint on any review from Horizon Hobby, is that these come just like this, not painted. Now that's not an issue for us today because, well, obviously we're going to be painting the entire aircraft. But if you pull up this wire for any reason, just keep in mind when you replace it, it's not painted, and you will have to do the painting. So therefore you're going to have to put the silver on, which good luck matching it, which is why we're painting the entire thing. Then the black. The white is, well, the funny thing is about this white, that's the bare foam, so yeah. Alright, now let's see if we can't get this on as smooth as possible, provided I can get the backing to come off. There we go. And I'm only peeling off a little bit at a time, so that way the rest of the tail just doesn't stick to whatever it wants. So we're going to try and match up exactly where the tape was before. And that looks close enough. Just make sure you smooth it down. Get all the air bubbles out of it. And then we're just going to slowly peel and press in. Now again, remember this is not painted. Now one other thing, since we're going to be painting the whole aircraft, I could remove the hardware from it so that way we don't paint the hardware. However, to be honest, I want to paint the hardware. I want this to blend in as seamlessly as possible. So that way you can't tell that it takes a servo to operate it. I am going to pull off this rubber piece that holds the clevis on though. You can see it right there. I'm going to take that off because I don't want to paint that. The reason for that is if I paint it, it won't be more rubber, it'll be hard, and it'll be difficult to put on and take off. I want to keep that. So I'll pull the clevis apart, pull that off, put it back on, and paint it. I am going to be removing the landing gear from the servos. Now, I'm going to tape all this up. I'm keeping my D-Day stripes. This will be all taped up, but I'm removing the landing gear because inside the well needs to be painted as well. I could just lower the landing gear, of course, but then I'd have to paint up the inside of the landing gear, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to remove them, and then we'll paint the whole thing. Now the bad thing is this decal sheet that we got, I just realized, if you look, it does not have the decal for the air intake. So what I'm going to have to do is just tape that up so that way I don't paint it. Which we can do, it's not a big deal. And then we still need to remove these decals. Those are going to be replaced. And since I'm not keeping the black stripes on the tail, that's all going to be red, I'm going to paint over these as well. Which means I'll probably I may not have to primer this. But, alright. We are going to use our painter's tape, which will not take the paint off. And I've got a roll of all-purpose project paper that we're going to use to cover up the big places. So I'll cut project paper to tape over here, so the tape will be running along the line, the project paper will covering all this, and then we'll have tape here, and we'll do the same for the other side, and then the same for the fuselage. Then we'll get to painting. So alright, I'm not going to film me doing all this process here because, to be honest, this is the most time consuming process of it all. Probably just to tape it and put the paper over it, probably 20-30 minutes, maybe more, and I can't compress that into 30 seconds. The most 30-minute job would compress probably into 10 minutes, and I don't think you want to watch 10 minutes of me putting that on, so I'll skip that for you guys. So I'll get this done, and we'll come back to it. We now have everything taped up that we do not want to paint, including our stand. We definitely don't want to paint that. So now this process was a lot more meticulous and a lot longer than I expected to take. So it's a good thing I didn't try filming it, because it was, well, let's just say it was several hours of hard work. I think that's going to be the hardest part of the entire thing. Now, if you notice, we taped over the D-Day invasion stripes because I don't want to lose those. We also taped up our intake, and as you saw earlier, taped over the cockpit. Now, the hardest problem I had was trying to get some tape over the LEDs that we just installed, and they kept coming off. Well, if that happens, what I'm going to end up doing is, if they get any paint on them, I'm just going to take some enamel thinner with a brush and lightly brush over the LEDs to clean off the paint. So we took off the landing gear, so that way we don't have to worry about it sticking up and trying to tape over that. That way we can paint the inside here. And then I put tape over the little wire here and took off the wheel. That way the wheel itself doesn't get painted. Now, I left all the push rods on. That way we can paint them up, they'll blend in. But however, I did take off those little rubber pieces that hold the clevis together. That way it doesn't get paint on it, the rubber will stay intact, and we'll just put it back on after we're done. Now, if you notice, we have not covered up the tail, where you may wonder why, because we're going to be painting it red. Well, I originally thought I was just going to tape over this and bag the whole back, but that was a lot more work than I wanted to do. I really don't care if it gets some overspray on it, because, like you said, we're going to be painting it anyways. So I'll just keep the can, spray paint up there. When I come back to here, I'll probably do a line all the way around the side, get all this. And if it gets overspray, we're not going to worry about it. We're going to have to put primer down because of the black, and then spray paint it red. So, who knows, I may even take the chrome paint and put over the black paint here, and maybe we won't have to primer. Either way, everything's taped that we don't want painted. And we're going to go ahead and get rid of those black lines because we already are on the tail, so no point in even having them. Every single decal has now been removed, and we'll put on the new decals when we're done. Alright, we're outside, and we've got the Testers 1290 Chrome. Let's get to painting it. Alright, well, we'll let that dry, and then we're going to turn it over and paint the bottom. We now have our painted Mustang, and she's looking beautiful. But there's one little factor that I kind of overlooked. The chrome looks amazing on it. Unfortunately, with it being so reflective, every piece of light reflects off of every little bit. So, unfortunately, our side effect is it's magnifying every single tiny little flaw in the aircraft instead of covering it up. That's kind of a disadvantage. And let me show you exactly what I mean. Now, I've kind of had to diffuse my overhead light a little bit, so because this paint is really reflective, and I didn't want to wash out everything, so it's a little bit dark. I apologize. Alright, first thing I kind of want to point out, you can kind of see here where the old decal used to be, that is just apparent that it was there. Just a little bit, when we peeled off a little bit of the styrofoam itself, so it wasn't matching perfectly. Not to mention, every single little divot and dirt is showing up. And the reason for that is the light is hitting this at different angles and bouncing off. So instead of like a regular paint where it's just uniform, absorbing a lot of the light particles, instead here it's reflecting it, and it's bouncing it all back right in the camera, right into your eyes, different views. So it's showing you every single little flaw. That's kind of a disadvantage for the plane, and I'll be honest, I briefly thought about painting over it with a silver and just getting rid of the chrome, but so you know what? I'm going to go ahead and run with this. Now, right here, we're just going to put the decal back, so that's not going to be an issue. However, where this will be an issue you can kind of see there. Might have to take off my diffuse for you to see it a little bit, but it's kind of dark. But you can see exactly where we put the foam filler. And I'll show you on the underside of the wing as well. That is an issue. Now, this is not the foam filler's fault, and I'll prove it to you in a minute. And of course, I haven't taken any of the tape off. So, you can see as the light reflects off of it exactly where we put our foam filler. Now, on this side is where the decal goes from here all the way back to here. So that's pretty much going to cover up most of that. If I use a different paint, of course I'd cover that up too, but I'm going to stick with this chrome. So what we're going to have to do instead is, I noticed one little thing. See where we put our servo tape? The chrome covered over that beautifully. So what I thought about doing is just putting a piece of, on the other side, of course, where our decal is not going to be covering it up. And you can see our servo tape here covered it up beautifully. So, if I take a piece of Scotch tape and just run it here, all the way across, and then spray paint the chrome again, that'll cover up that whole thing. Now, let me prove it to you that it's not the foam filler and it's the paint's fault. I'm going to take off the filter that I put over my light. Now you can see it's kind of washing out everything. See the big glare now? That's why I put that thing up there. But alright, so here we have our battery hatch. And if you remember, we used foam filler on this as well. Can you tell where? If you remember where, you'll know where to look. But by just looking at it, you can't see it. Now if you look real close, we filled in a hole right here and right there. And if you look by me pointing it out, you can see where it's at. And that's only because it doesn't match the exact density of the foam behind it and the exact pattern and everything else. However, the black spray paint makes it blend in seamlessly. You cannot even see it. I have a feeling with the tail, the red will cover that up. So I'm not going to put tape over the rear part. I'm pretty sure the red is going to cover it up just fine when we put on the red tail. The chrome wings are going to be a different story, unfortunately. So we're going to have to put tape over that and cover it up and repaint it. And then we have our horizontal stabs right here, which I just used a regular primer on. And that was to cover up the black stripes that we had. If I would have just done the red, the black stripes was shown right through. So we'll go ahead and spray paint these up red, and then on our Mustang I'm going to put the tape over, and then I'm going to spray paint the chrome, and I'm going to draw the lines for our tail, and we're going to spray paint that red. We'll let it dry and start peeling some of this paint off and put it all back together. Alright, now I want to show you a couple things. First of all, we have our fuselage, which I have put the paper over the entire fuselage because we're getting ready to paint the tail. And this is where our lines are going to be. Everything exposed is going to be painted the red. And then, right here on the front, you can't really tell too well, but you'll see it right here. And I did on both sides, kind of little triangle. Now the front cowl is going to cover up this, so if that gets a little paint on it, that's not a big deal. It's just going to be right here where we want that red. So you're going to have the cowl go on, and then each side is going to have those red triangles, give it a little bit more definition. So I'll have that, and then we'll have our red tail. And I want to just point out something real quick. You notice how the paper isn't exactly pretty on there. Looks like the worst Christmas present wrapping ever. Talk about a fail. But you know what? That's okay. As you can tell, the wife, she wraps all the Christmas presents. I let her do everything. Me, I'll just stick to this. It's okay that it's looking bad. Because guess what? It isn't for show. It's not going to be sitting under the Christmas tree. It's only going to stay wrapped as long as it takes to paint it. All we're doing is keeping the paint off the rest of the fuselage. So paint up our tail, paint up our nose, and then we get to unwrap our Christmas present. And look at how beautiful it is. And speaking of beautiful, I just want to show you. Here's our perfectly red horizontal stabs. Gorgeous. But I got one more thing for you. I went ahead and unwrapped our wing. And if you remember the bottom of the wing, I was keeping the D-Day stripes. And we put the new servo tape on, which means we'd have to paint it. So, I went ahead and did that. You can see our servo tape right here. And then I painted up the black. And there's the white, then the black again. It goes back to the silver, or the chrome. So we've got beautiful D-Day stripes. And of course, I put back on our landing gear. Use the chrome paint to paint that. Of course, I just taped that up. Isn't that beautiful? So this concludes part 3 of our build. Stay tuned for part 4, and we'll get it up as soon as possible. We'll get everything painted, and we'll show you the rest of what's coming up. And then at the end of part 4, we'll have our completed aircraft. If you you want to see more, please subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. Have any questions, comments, put them down below. And I always thank you for watching. And stay tuned for part 4.